my fellow readers, I Dark Symphony 777 back with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications. Leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, any future fan fiction you want me to read or review. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, first off, before I get into the actual review, I want to wish everyone a well-wished New Year's, and hopefully a good 2021. 2020 was a horrible year, not gonna lie, but I hope we can hopefully move on from it. Hopefully. So, the story I'm going to review is... Crap, where is it? Wait, oh crap, I forgot to... I should just remember I took it off. 9 Mercenaries at... What is with this... 9 Mercenaries at Freddy's by Paradoxia. It is a Team Fortress 2, of all things, and Five Nights at Freddy's, of all things, crossover. Oh, fan fiction can get weird sometimes. You never know what you're gonna get. You can get the most magnificent thing in the world, and then you get something like this. I'm not saying the story's bad. I'm saying the story's stupid. That's basically my main opinion of the story. It's fine, but it's also stupid. It's a weird thing. So let's just get into the story. So the story is basically Five Nights at Freddy's, but with the red team of Team Fortress 2. That's it. That's it. It's like, we need the extra money. It's like, well, what should we do? Let's work at this pizzeria. Heavy says yes, but Heavy will be bored. Maybe Heavy will have sandwich. And that's basically the whole story. It's just them just literally argue each other while dealing with the animatronics, as the animatronics are trying to kill them for over 5 nights. That's the plot, basically. And that's honestly the weakest part of the story is the plot. As in, there's a plot, but the author doesn't do anything with that plot. It's weird. Now this wouldn't be such a big deal if not for the fact there's a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's fanfiction that deals with the same premise. And someone works at Five Nights at Freddy's, and basically stuff happens. Like they get killed, they get killed, they get beaten up, they have to try and survive. Sometimes one of the animatronics, usually Foxy turns out to be female, and they want to get in the guy's pants. That's fine. But 9 times out of 10, that's how most Five Nights at Freddy's stories work. Except for Just Another Night at Freddy's. I actually find that story hilarious, with Foxy going, "The front door! Freedom!" Sorry, I was getting flashbacks to that story. I gotta actually review that story in the future. That story is hilarious. But that's beside the point. Basically, there is some nuggets of other stories, like the whole thing with Engineer and his wife dying, and also Scout's relationship with Spy and his mother, and Scout's mother is explored at least a little bit. But for the most part, it's literally just they show up at work, the animatronics turn to life, the animatronics beat the shit out of the mercenaries, and they hopefully survive. I'm like, but nothing's done with it. Outside of that. And another thing with the plot is the genres of the story are horror humor. That's what it shows on fanfiction.net as of this recording. Who knows? The author may just change the genre. It happened before. A lot of the humor is very hit or miss. I mean, again, as I said before in other videos, comedy is very subjective. You may laugh at something that I didn't laugh at, but most of the humor comes from Soldier being Soldier. And a lot of, so Soldier's, in my opinion, probably the least funny Team Fortress 2 character. That's just me. I honestly think Soldier is very one note in terms of humor. Again, if you like Soldier, that's fine. I really don't. I just prefer the humor of every single other character, especially characters like, and especially like Spy or Heavy, or hell, like Sniper. I actually really like Sniper as a character. He's probably, in my opinion, Sniper is probably the funniest character. Just me. But it's really kind of weird that a lot of like the story tries to balance horror and humor and doesn't really succeed at either. That's me. With the humor, a lot of the humor again comes from Soldier, but on the horror side, you have 9 mercenaries who are first off used to dying, and second, one of them can literally body like half the animatronics by himself in Heavy. They have like from the horror aspect. Okay, we're like the reader's like, okay, if they die, they can respond. Nothing wrong. And then Miss Pauline tells him, that the respawn may not work. And it's like, okay, that's something. But then Soldier has his shotgun on him for some reason. Because, well, again, because he's Soldier. They constantly contradict themselves with like how the characters behave. Like it makes sense, but it doesn't really translate to a horror story. Like Miss Pauline tells me you're not allowed to carry any gear and weapons. Soldier brings a shotgun. Spy brings all his gear. Medic brings his medigun to heal them. It really it is really weird that the author tried to make this a horror story and goes out of his way to constantly undermine the horror aspects. Like a good aspect of a horror movie is trying to take the villain seriously as a threat. Like, okay, he has a realistic chance of killing just about anyone. Like that's one of the that's one of the tenets of like old school horror. Like you don't know who is gonna die. Like, is this person gonna die? Another person introduced. Is this person gonna die, or something gonna happen to them? You don't know. You really don't know who is gonna get hit, and that's undermined by the simple fact that I couldn't take any of the Fazbear crew seriously at all because first off, the good guys outnumber the Fazbear crew. Like there's 9 against 4. And Heavy's probably like 2 people by himself. Like he literally took down like at least all the animatronics at least once by himself. I know he took down Foxy. He took down Chica. He took down Bonnie. I can't remember if he took down Freddy. But he took down 3 of the 4 animatronics at the very minimum by himself. So if even temporarily, like you're trying to, like the author's trying to convey that since the crew doesn't have access to their gear, they stand a much harder chance of a much easier chance of dying. And even if they do have respawn, they might not respawn right. But then you have Spy with all his gear, his sappers, his like camouflage, his cloaking device. You have the medic with his medigun. It undermines a lot of the horror. Not to mention, half the time when any of the Fazbear crew actually beats one of the mercenaries, all another character has to do is just show up and say, "Hey, hook in." So I'm just thinking of something for Foxy, and then Foxy just leaves the mercenary already beaten out and goes after another person. It doesn't make sense considering the fact this whole point of Fazbear and how they operate was their determinedness to stuff a suit. So it wouldn't make sense for them to constantly knock. So where was I? Sorry, I got distracted. So anyway, it's very hard to take the Fazbear crew seriously when anytime they even try to do something, they get distracted by something else. It's very weird. And it really undermines what the story is trying to do with this horror-esque aesthetic, with just trying to portray the Fazbear, Freddy Fazbear, and all of them as unstoppable machines that that take a lot to stay down. Like the only way they're even down even temporarily is if either heavy beats the crap out of them or they get hit by a sapper by the spy. Like that's really the only way. And that lack of seriousness in the villain side just undermines a lot of the more important stuff, like medic almost dying, spy dying, the whole part with the kid, even Scout going and seeing the actual lore of Five Nights at Freddy's with like the Five Nights FNAF 2 cutscenes with like the puppet watching Freddy and stuff like that. That's all undermined by the fact that we don't take Freddy Fazbear and any of his crew seriously. At no point in the story did I ever really took them seriously as threats. Like I read other stories where they're portrayed more seriously because of the writing style, how they're built up, who they're fighting, and lots of other stuff. Like it's just a very weird scenario. Reading a FNAF story and not taking any of the main antagonists seriously at all, and then you also introduce the puppet. You introduce the ghost of William Afton. You introduce the ghost of Golden Freddy, like all that stuff, and you still can't take them seriously. Like at no point. And that really, really stinks because everything else is actually not bad. Like first off, the characters, you basically just have the 9 mercenaries and Miss Pauline and Scout's mom to an extent. They're basically loud, rambunctious, very hammy, very over the top. Engineer is very subdued. Medic is kind of like nervous because the uncertainty of respawn, and they kind of make the story what it is because, like I said, a lot of the humor comes from Soldier, but the rest of the humor comes from the dialogue that the characters do and talking to each other, and they kind of you can kind of see where they're coming from and how they become family despite the dysfunctionality. Like when people thought Medic was dying, like Heavy like beats up Cheek and then it just picks him up and bangs him to the car. It's like we yo yo, and then Heavy picks up the Medigun and tries to get it to work. It's like and he's like pushing it and he's like holding it and like doing the stuff and he goes like, yeah, I'll let Medic do it when he wakes up. Despite the fact Medic had like a hole in his throat. Just saying, like I said, most of the humor came from Soldier, but there's plenty of humor from the other characters. And there is one joke from Soldier that I did like, and that was because when Soldier decided to dress up as a robot, it's like, I have a plan. And he like knocks out Demo Man, and he like dresses as a robot and goes like, beep boop, I am a robot. And then Bonnie's like, and then they start dragging Demo Man to the back. And then Foxy spots them and he's like, and then Soldier goes, beep boop, I am a robot. And Foxy's like, go ahead. He takes off the mask. It's like, oh no, I have been found out. And then literally everybody's like, Bonnie was shocked. Bonnie was so shocked he dropped Demo Man. And I thought that was probably the funniest moment in the story. Just bar none. But the characters, they're fine as is. They didn't need a lot. Like the only character that got development was Engineer, as we went a little into his backstory with his wife, who was sick, and Engineer tried to make a machine to heal her, to try and live with her more, but he became so obsessed with the machine to try and heal her that when she died, it was because he was too busy trying to get the machine into the hospital and onto the truck and all that stuff, and it kind of makes him sobering, especially at the end where he tells us that Freddy, like, he purposely activates Freddy ahead of time, just to tell him it's like, it's, you've been, I found out you went through a lot of stuff, I went through stuff too. And then Engineer walks away. And actually Freddy thanks him. Engineer honestly thinks he's like hallucinating, but he's like, eh, what do you understand? And it's a lot of just little minor moments from the character. It's fine as is. Grammar, I didn't find any grammar errors. Pacing and writing, the writing is very simplistic, but then again, when you're dealing with this type of story, the very simplistic writing style is probably beneficial. Pacing is fine. It keeps a brisk pace of uh, like I said, a lot of the problems with the story just comes directly from the plot. With the writing style, it keeps a brisk pace. Like if I was able to take the Fazbear Crew seriously, I would say it's fine as it is with the pacing. And even now, like the pacing itself is actually fine. Like it keeps a brisk enough pace that of like the of panic of the mercenaries trying to keep holding back the Fazbear Crew until 6 a.m. and stuff like that. Uh, it keeps itself busy enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't go slow enough that it doesn't drag on, and and the pacing combined with everything else is a good mixture. Like when they're outside the base, it kind of slows down a little bit without without dragging because these are just intermissions of just getting them into the next night and stuff like that. So as it is, it's fine. Now, would I recommend this story? I don't want to say this, but I have to say this. I really wouldn't. It's it's the reason I'm not recommending the story is exclusively because of the plot. The plot does not advance enough, and just the fact I could not take Freddy Fazbear, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy seriously at no point. Like if this was like a pure humor story, then I would honestly give it slack and say, okay, fine, I would recommend it as a humor story. Yeah, it's kind of bad humor, but but it's good enough that I can easily go, okay, I would recommend it to people who just happen to be a fan of that, right? Of Team Fortress 2. But it's a humor horror, and that's the deal breaker. That one word, horror. It's not. The story is not scary at all. There is no tenseness. There is no not even jump scares. Like there's not even any jump scares. Nothing about the story is very scary. You can't take any of the Fazbear Crew seriously. Again, if this was like pure humor, I would let this all slide. I would legitimately let this all slide and let it pass. It's just that it did a bad job, so bad a job at being a horror story that I just can't. I really can't recommend it. Favorite part? Honestly, the soldier pretending to be a robot gag. That was actually pretty funny. What would I do to change it? Honestly, there's two routes you can go with. Like the easier route is just drop the horror tag. Like that's it. That's literally it. That's like easy. You just go into the link, get rid of the horror tag, don't touch anything else. That's it. The other route is if you want to keep it humor horror, you gotta find some way to make Freddy Fazbear and the crew scary. And you can do this in any number of ways. First off, you can probably limit the amount of mercenaries that work in the pizzeria. Like you have 9 robots, why not like 3 or 4? So that way it's more tense, considering the fact one, it's either an even playing field, but not really. But also, or it can be like they have the numbers advantages, so it kind of brings up the tenses of they can get overwhelmed at any single time. Or you could just have them be smart. Have the Fazbear Crew be smarter. Just like if they beat up someone and they're dragging them, and then another mercenary just comes and insults them, just have them ignore them and like have the mercenaries go after the animatronics to get them away. So it brings a level of tenseness that they're not like them just yelling at them and insulting them is going to get them off. No, they have to go after the robots to try and get them off, risking their lives. It brings a certain level of tenseness of will they come back, and food for thought. And that's really my review of Nine Mercenaries at Freddy's. Like I said, this story wasn't bad, but it was just such a poor horror story that I cannot recommend it. And that really hurts because I was entertained by the story. I think it does have potential to be a good story, but as it is right now, with that specific set of genres, I cannot recommend it. Like honestly, like I said, the easy thing to do would literally just drop the horror, just drop that horror tag. Like that just needs to go. Yeah, it would work. Yeah, doing the fixes, making them intimidating, would be more beneficial in the long run. But again, you can easily just get rid of the horror tag, change nothing else, and the story would probably be better for itself anyway. So that is Nine Mercenaries at Freddy's. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.